Something very magical about comfortable silence. There's an ease, there's a simplicity, there's an unspoken understanding. And through that understanding, we can begin to build a direct conversation with the deeper aspects of ourselves. Because of course there's comfortable silence. Why would there not be a comfortable silence? And if in fact there were uncomfortable silence, then where would that discomfort be coming from? We can easily say, oh, it's the other person is making me feel uncomfortable. But oftentimes with deeper exploration, it always comes back to the individual who is experiencing, is actually the one who is creating. And that's sweet, that's soft. This is in no way, shape, or form a negative. It's actually incredibly positive to connect to the truth of a reality. And within that truth, develop the honesty which is necessary in order to move yourself to the next place, the next level of your experience. So within that simple, ordinary, everyday magic, we begin to empower ourselves. Empower ourselves to be able to engage with this level of consciousness, which is understanding. Engaging with a level of consciousness which is understanding versus a level of consciousness which is not understanding. So the same principle applies if there is the inability to understand. It's not because the outside is doing something. It's because this inside place needs to shift just slightly. Just like making comfortable silence, we make understandable space. We want to create understandable space inside of ourselves. And a large part of that developing understanding is trust. The ability to trust that what you're saying is the truth. Developing a trust bond through the sensations of the body first, and then second, the language of the mind. And the reason why I say that is because the language of the mind is very active and busy. The agility of the mind enables it to do many things, it seems, very quickly, one after the other. So for us to jump into that flow, that stream, and apply understanding to that, it can sometimes be challenging. But sensations is very, very different. It's slower moving. It's already steeped in a level of understanding because of its pathways that it takes. So it's very well worn. The nervous system. We experience the body as a mode of developing confidence for a very long time, from the beginning of our development. We learn how to crawl, we learn how to stand, we learn how to walk, we learn how to ride a bike. So there's all these milestones of confidence. The mind also has those milestones, but because of the abstract nature, this very agile experience of the mind, it sometimes is more challenging to trust, coupled with the fact that oftentimes that which we experience from the mind as understood knowledge comes from an outside source. It's an interesting thing. Someone says, I'd like you to remember this. Versus, oh, here, let me teach you how to walk. So the remembering is a little bit different from understanding often. We want to get to a place of being able to understand the experiences that we have coming from the inside, steeped within more trust than the experiences that are happening from the outside. So therefore, you always have your wits, a strong tool with you. forging this development for me is always for the sake of enabling myself to soften and do less. Soften and do less. The less I can do, then the more present I am within my meditative experience, within the practice of the technique. The practice of the technique is very simple, very, very simple. But often the mind will complicate it. But the body maintains its simplification. So either yes, we're experiencing comfort, or no, we're not. It's often one or the other. Yes, I experience the rhythms of the heart, or no, actually I don't. But with mind, there's storylines upon storylines upon storylines, which are a little bit more complicated. So we are continuously creating that loop between body-mind, again and again and again, which is joined with the rhythms of your breathing. So sensation of body, which you feel is understood, you can actually breathe into those lines of experience and strengthen them. Does this make sense? And this can be applied to your meditation practice, but it can also be applied to any other action that you're doing. No matter what it is, if you feel that which is good for you in your workplace and it's working, breathe into it. Support that. Strengthen it. Create consistency around that sensation that is stimulating your mind to rest in the way that it rests, which is optimizing your ability to act in accordance to that depth of understanding, that place that is designed specifically for you. We can generalize conversation, but ultimately it has to always come back to the individual experiencer. And that individual experience is absolutely unique. And then there's always threads of that individual's experience that can then be joined into the collective. So you can see how it becomes very important to develop the trust bond for ourselves within ourselves, seeing that you are unique and individual. And as human beings, there's always this thirst or need to become a part of community. But in this way, you are coming into a community whole and complete, self-assured, self-understood, self-confident, which is unwavering. And then you offer your vibration, your space, your presence. And then there's a collaboration that occurs, which creates the magic, the dynamism. Referring back again and again, not to the external challenge, but the internal solution. Not the external challenge, but the internal solution. And in that way, you are always safeguarding the deepening of your understanding through self-inquiry, which ultimately will develop you on your path of meditation, but also the path of life. And then along that path, there are many, many moments of realization. Many moments of realization. Small and large aha moments, which can increase in the frequency as we develop the understanding how to support these sensations through breathing. Because that's then stimulating the mind and the space that the mind holds. So now you have three working together, body, breath, mind, working towards one goal, one destination, one reason. Eliminating a lot of the confusion. We are task-oriented as human beings. We do many things, one after the other. But if we can narrow the scope of the reason why we do all the things that we do and connect into the soul level, do a little soul searching as to why are you in this world? It doesn't need to be grandiose. We're just all beautiful, ordinary people sitting in this room, but there is a very important reason why you're here. And we want to develop that into everything that we do. There is one reason. And I say one because that's simple. It simplifies everything. So you could have 100 different words to explain why you're here, but can you then distill it down to one essential word that encapsulates it all? And in that, it's a constant reminder. We are the teachers. You are actually the teacher. It's encoded inside of you. All the questions and all the answers. Very, very literally. External aids for your development are just simply stimulating that which is already inside. And through very good listening, through becoming a devout student and grounding oneself, we're able to then harness the instruction and apply it, rather than disseminating too quickly. So what I mean by that is these aha moments, these realizations, these understandings are for you. So we want to hold that in for a while and not tell anybody. We don't need to tell anybody how great we are or the amazing experiences that are happening. And the reason why I say that is because when we have that understanding or that realization, it's the seed which then needs to germinate, grow a little sprout on the bottom and a root system, I should say, and a little sprout towards the top and begin to grow. Now, as the root system is starting to develop in strength, that little seed turns into an actual plant. And it's growing in strength and getting ready for you to share the fruit. But we want the tree to be mature and ready before the fruit is then given. And that fruit is then your wisdom, which is then naturally expressed through a question and answer, just simple in the street, or a solution to something dynamic that's happening. But all the time, when you've been just working it with yourself, it's been growing inside of you. And that's what I suggest you do when you're approaching your meditation experience, your meditation technique, your meditation insight, is that you just keep it in for as long as you possibly can until somebody pulls it out of you, so to speak. Questions are different. I mean, if one has a question, it's really important to ask a question and get the answer. But you'll know what I mean as it's emerging. The pieces that maybe you just need to hold in a little bit longer. And this inability just to retain the information is a form of confidence, is a form of discipline, is a form of understanding also. And you can see how that is as you start to work with it. So what's happening on the inside that wishes for you to express in that way. This is being the example, but then if you look at every aspect of your life, ideally we are working towards streamlining all of those leaky points, and so they're no longer leaking, and we can consolidate our energy and the power so that then we can be big and strong. And within that strength become very, very soft. And it's that soft strength which is long-lasting, eternal. And I say eternal because if you look up in the sky, there's nothing but softness. all the space between the stars that have been created and the planets and supernovas and all of that beauty. Between it all, within it all, is absolute softness, which is outlasting it all. Anything that is made up of hard matter, dense matter, eventually will go back into its softness. So within the practice of meditation, we continuously return back to that simple fact of nature. And emulating that softness, but also the strength, so that then we are able to fit into any container, which means my body, but the container moves outwards into any circumstance or situation that I'm in, within any community, in any work dynamic. We can just simply fit, become comfortable, and not need to say anything until something needs to be said. Trusting in the timing. So meditation is a lot about that, trust in timing. The timing often is a little bit longer than what one might expect. So if you say, I want my mind to be calm and quiet right now. But that right now might take a little bit of time, for the simple fact that we have well-worn grooves that we return back to again and again. They feel comfortable, they feel understood, they feel real, they feel like us. When we attempt to quiet the mind or teach ourselves how to think differently, more positively, more self-assuring, it's stiff, it's challenging at first, and it bounces back and forth. It feels like no matter what we do, it always goes back to that same way. So then we tend to just say, well, it's the way that it is. And that's true, it is the way that it is now. But with neuroplasticity and all this understanding, which is aiding in and supporting the yogic understanding of how we can change our mind, our thoughts, our habits, through awareness. Deciding where we put our awareness. Where are you looking right now? Through what lens do you see me? Or the people around you? Or the cushion that you're sitting on? That awareness becomes everything. Because without awareness, then there's nothing. Without your awareness, you don't exist. So because of awareness, all things are here. So that's a very powerful instrument that you have built inside of you. And you can increase the focus and decrease the focus of that awareness. You can have many, many filters in front of it, or you can have no filters, just pure light of awareness coming through. And that's the objective of meditation, is we want to get to a place where there's no longer any filters, and just pure light of your awareness coming through. That conscious individual, you, as yourself, without any extra. All things are already understood in a general realm inside of you. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you experience it. So if you experience it, then it is understood on a general level already. So now it's just the teaching of thought and mind to be okay with that. It's already understood. And that there's a more subtle and soft way of communicating. A contemplation. So contemplation is a deep form of thought. A deep form of thought that is directly connected to your well-being, your movement forward. So enable yourself to reach those new depths of thinking and get out of those races, those mazes that sometimes we have formed. Simplification, awareness is always paired with action. So the action should match the awareness. Action matches awareness. Action of the body, the way you hold yourself, the way you eat, what you eat, how you conduct within your relationships, what you choose to do, what you choose not to do, ideally is in support of that awareness. And what you do could be anything, and how you do it can be specific to you. The cultivation of action within meditation wants to be conducive to the awareness and also conducive to developing the seat. So we want to develop strength within the postural muscles of the body. So ideally, we reduce the slouching comfort and increase the stacking comfort of the body. The more we can enable the stacking of the body, then the clearer it is for the nervous system to fire and communicate all the way out to your limbs, tips of fingers, tips of toes, but also the pelvic floor and the crown of the head. The greater ability we have to feel the breath through the nervous system. So that linking of sensation and breath becomes a very real thing. And this is our technical practice time. And then we have instant proof of what that connection and combination is doing in relation to the mind, because the mind will shift. Notice the awareness and the conscious level, the images of the mind also when you're slouching. Notice what happens to those same pieces when you're sitting up tall. It sounds so simple, but it makes an incredible difference. How you hold your body posture makes a big difference. It's language on a subtle level. It's a soft way of speaking, but very direct. The language of the body. So if you are one who is out in the world and working and doing and must get people to hear your opinion and agree with what you're saying and do something that you're asking them to do, work with body language. Work with your face. Work with your eyes. Work with your eyebrows. Work with that wonderful smile and see what happens. Taking on the responsibility of yourself and saying, oh, maybe I have a frown on my face. Maybe I look upset, or maybe I look annoyed, or maybe I'm not feeling or looking so confident right now. So all these subtleties make up the entire experience of who you are. This is why meditation is so useful for us, because meditation asks for a very calm and relaxed face. Stoic in nature, but within softness. So this relaxing and soft face then translates. The sweetness, the innocence that comes through your eyes is formed through your ability to gaze at that brightness that you see in the space. Enabling you to connect on a very real level to that other individual who you're speaking to. Not taking on the task of pushing their buttons, but rather soothing the buttons. Not because you want to be a do-gooder, but just because you're being yourself, and that is what happens. And if that does not translate, and that person is still having a button that's been pushed in, well, that's okay. It's the same premise as attempting to find quiet. If you sit anywhere and attempt to find absolute quiet, it's really hard. And sometimes you could say impossible. But what you do find at many moments of the day is an internal quiet place. And I challenge you to look and see that even it's completely quiet and you consistently connect to it throughout your day. But it's just glimpses of moments. And then you're right back into the next thought, the next task, the next doing. So it's in that quiet place that we find on the inside that we can begin to understand and then ultimately realize that this whole place is actually made up of sounds. We live in a world of sound. And within all sound, there is a quiet space. We have to just simply accept that it exists there in the middle of it, in between it all. And then all sound becomes just simply that, sound. And incorporating itself into your meditative experience. So it becomes part of the meditation, no longer a distraction. So now we are successfully increasing focus and the ability to concentrate because we have successfully taught ourselves to no longer be distracted by those sounds. But that goes even further in its ability to no longer feel distracted, not just by sounds of traffic or music, but sounds of somebody's voice, distracting you from your reason for being here, your true why. The course that you've set yourself on already can be swayed often by good language of another. Not ill-intended, well-intended, but the understanding might not be whole and complete from that other individual, as it is whole and complete inside of you for you. So we're minimizing the distraction through the ability to soften. And within the softening, we're actually establishing true strength. The air that we breathe is here long after we are gone. That's a perfect example. So strong, it's actually what keeps us alive. Nothing else is doing that. But it's subtle. We don't pay much attention. We rarely even think about the fact that this is what is keeping us alive. And it's always present and absolutely essential. So you become that peace. Your conscious, aware experience of who you are becomes that essential piece. That without it, nothing exists. So that should empower you. It should give you the ability to soften. Knowing that all the experiences that you're having, you are having. Oftentimes it's already happening. So that is you. And then how we rest within that, what we do with that, the action that comes straight from that, is then setting the course for the next action, for the next experience. So it's this inside place that we keep making these subtle shifts towards alignment that makes the world such a beautiful place, bright and shiny. One could maybe even say heaven on earth. Why not? Make your own little place. Just getting primed and ready for whether or not there is something after. We don't necessarily know. I mean, we can all speculate. We all have experiences that maybe lean us towards one way or the other, but you don't really know. So if that's a hesitation for you to develop a little place for yourself here, I think that maybe just unplug the hesitation and experiment with just building a little place for yourself, a space, a simplification. Create meaning through direct experience of understanding. Allow your well of understanding to come from an inside source rather than an outside source. Me sitting here, I am simply stimulating this inside source. Any questions? How are you, good sir?
The inside source and the outside source. If one practices, let's say, selfless service, where they do things without expectation, eventually one loses their ego self. Not that it's bad, but the ego self. And there's a joy that comes from being selfless.
That's right.
If one goes to Wednesday meditation and hears you speak, stimulating the inside voice, correct? One goes home with that information and applies it. If they're diligent, they apply it. And then they grow and expand in their consciousness.
Yes.
So would you not say that the inside voice and the outside voice must work in tandem?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was the question.
Yes. And the well of trust, that trust must come from the inside, then expanding to the outside.
And that trust is established by the experience inside.
That's right. That's right.
And that's the joy.
That's right.
But we keep it to ourselves to have the seed grow.
That's right. And be an example of it. So instead of talking about it, you just are that.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, and that's the action piece. So the awareness coupled with action then creates the whole and complete effort.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful talk tonight. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is regarding the kind of keeping that seed of whatever it is that you have found and allowing it to germinate. My question is how to stay in awareness that the seed is there with all the stimulation and interaction with the outside world and without sharing it. How is one to stay in awareness that the seed has been planted or has been found and that it needs watering and nurturing?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. If one is aware that an experience has occurred, then that ultimately is the seed that is being planted. The germination of it, the sun, the water, is a natural process. And it is strengthened through your effort. Effort not necessarily looking for the seed, making sure that it's all watered and watching it grow, but rather through your effort of action. So quite truly, the way that you sit, the way that you talk, what you choose to put in your body, the sensations that you choose to have resting inside your body are all developmental steps towards that germination, then becoming a strong tree and the fruit being there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got a basic question for you. Like, I'm nowhere near the realization or something, but once, actually, if you can tell us like how you can practice your meditation in such a way that you can differentiate your mind, ego, so that you can be into that awareness that you were talking about as the true self, and what are the ways to reach the Samadhi, and in that state of Samadhi, like, there is no observer, there is only you present there, but do you stay in that state for a long time in that deep meditation, or you basically reach there and come out, reach there and come out?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Yeah. The first part of your question, talking about the ego and the developing through that, and how to reach a deeper state of self, comes through the quiet space. So developing dynamic stillness, becoming very, very quiet. And when we do that, meaning that we're choosing space itself over anything else that can be shown to us, means that whatever it is that is being shown to us actually has a lifespan, a life expectancy. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that life of the image or the personality through to its end. And then it dissolves. And when it dissolves, it does not come back to interrupt you. I mean, you still have a personality and you still have ego component, but it's not interrupting. Okay. And it happens over time. So the more that we catch on to images and experiences inside, that's feeding the self-identifying piece. I am doing this, I am that. Mm-hmm. And for Samadhi, which is the second part of your question, we are letting go of that I am component, which is the self-identifier, which is the ego. So the how to achieve Samadhi, and Samadhi just simply means absorption. So the deeper realms of meditation, you go into deep states of absorption where the room disappears, your body disappears, the breath becomes so subtle it feels like you're not breathing at all, and the mind becomes so supple and soft and what's the word that I'm looking for? Dissolved, that it no longer is disturbing. So the how within that is the same as letting go of one's ego. It's just simply connecting to the most quiet aspects of who we are. Because we want to get right to the root, to the essential being of who we are. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that comes with such keen listening. But the listening is not coming just from your ears. The listening comes from all of the senses. Mm-hmm. So this is pratyahara. Pratyahara is withdrawing yourself away from that which is distracting you, like the noise sounds. And the body's senses are also a part of a distraction. We itch, or we want to move, or we don't want to sit anymore, or feel so good we want to stay here forever. All of those aspects we want to redirect into the listening of the most quiet experience that you have on the inside, which will then expand itself to the quiet of the outside. Mm-hmm. Now the third part of your question was the duration of time spent. And that is varied depending on the strength of the meditation that individual has, and also depending on the reason why that person is there. Mm-hmm. Quite often there is an initial strong Samadhi experience that will then leave that individual sometimes for days within that absorption, and then coming out of the absorption very much in tune with it still, meaning that they'll sit and just stare at a flower or at a waterfall for hours at a time without noticing time pass. And then after that initial, then it becomes a returning back to that absorption, and then taking the essence, and just like all the other aspects of the topics that we were talking about today, allowing it to naturally express throughout your day. So these are those individuals that are very high vibration, very calm, very peaceful. There's a lot of light coming from them. Mm-hmm. And then they return back to that Samadhi state in the morning if they have their morning meditation. Now, if they are not so active, if you are not so active within your day-to-day, then you would stay for a longer duration within the technical Samadhi experience in meditation for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 days, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on you.
Yeah, because I'm not saying that I'm going through something, but I've gone into a state where actually it's you only exist basically, like there's nothing, but that state is like maybe for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then you know it, that okay, you're coming back
That's right.
to that. So it's that.
And
wonderful.
then it's creating the well-worn path.
Okay.
Yeah, those pathways through the nervous system, also the organization of the brain, so you recognize sensation that's leading you there without holding. The moment you attempt to hold, then it will dissipate. But if you can just simply understand how to remember without holding, then the path becomes very strong.
Okay, perfect, beautiful.
Thank you. Any final questions? Okay, let's sit. Keeping the eyes closed, let's bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, bring your gaze into the space just there in front of you. And with a soft intensity, maintain the integrity of the space. Keeping the eyes closed, soften the gaze. Very slowly, gently, allow the eyes to open. That was nice. Very nice. Thank you very much, everyone. Namaste.